Good morning, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome once again to Valley Beth Shalom live and online. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein, joined this morning by my dear friends Rabbi Sherry Hirsch of the American Jewish University and Rabbi Mark Gelman, newly replanted in Boca Raton, Florida. And we're delighted that you've got books on your shelves and chairs unpacked, and we're glad that you found a new home and a place where you'll be celebrated and welcomed once again. Dear friends, it's good to have you together. This is going to be our last week before Rosh Hashanah is coming. And next week, of course, we're going to be having the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, so we will not have Torah study. I want to encourage you to make sure that you've made arrangements with your synagogue to participate in their services. Most everybody is doing these things online. There are a few congregations that will be having some in-person events, but most everybody's doing it online. So make sure that you have all of the code words and passwords and sign-ins and sign-ups that you need in order to participate in the high holidays that your congregation is going to be putting forth. And if you don't have a congregation, you have no trouble signing on to so many of them, including my own, and so many opportunities to learn and to celebrate. But that makes this year very special. So the Torah portion for this morning, as we've said many times, the Torah portions were not timed for the holidays that were coming, but they ironically work out kind of well. And this one in particular, Atem nitzavim hayom, you are standing here together, says Moshe. You are standing here, all of the various sectors of Israelite society, from the lowest to the highest, from the youngest to the oldest, and not just you, but all the generations to come, in some mythical way are standing with us today as we make a covenant with God. As we make a covenant and pledge ourselves to pursue this vision of the sacred society, this vision of the holy personality, this vision of a redeemed world, says Moses to his people. And I want you to promise to do that with me today, because if you aren't going to make that promise, we're not going to take the next step into the promised land. And that covenanting, that bonding together into a communal project, a sense of communal mission, is at the very heart of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is our covenanting festival. It's no accident that under normal circumstances, all of us would be coming to synagogue. All of us would be standing together in prayer. All of us would be pledging ourselves to this covenant, because Rosh Hashanah was the re-enrollment in the covenant of Abraham and Sarah, the covenant of Moses and his people. And Nitzavim represents what Rosh Hashanah is really most about, which is that recovenanting of a people. But this year, of course, is going to be very odd and very special and very unique in the sense that this year we're not coming to synagogue. We're going to be socially distanced. We're going to be separated from each other, confined to our own homes, our own places. We're going to turn on computers and televisions and participate in the service from a distance. And that means that the responsibility for making this holiday shifts from the rabbi and cantor who are preparing their sermons and their prayers to Jews at home who are going to make this holiday in the same language that we use for Passover. In Passover, my grandmother used to talk about machen Pesach, making the Passover, which meant cleaning the house and cooking the meal and inviting the family and setting the table and preparing the Haggadah. In the same way, we have to make Yontif. Now, how do we do that? How do we properly prepare the home we live in? How do we prepare the setting? And how do we prepare ourselves to make this holiday meaningful, to make this holiday powerful? That's what we're going to ask our guests this morning. So let's begin. Sherry, tell us how you're making Yontif this year.
Shabbat Shalom, Eddie and Mark. So good to see you every week. It's sort of just truly a pleasure. It's the highlight of my week. So I've been asking people to reframe what they understand as Rosh Hashanah. We understand Pesach as a home holiday, and we can't imagine not being a home holiday. But we frame Rosh Hashanah as an out holiday. We go to the synagogue, we see all our friends, we wear new outfits, we do everything out, and we let the synagogue run it. So I'm challenging people to reframe Rosh Hashanah as a home holiday. So what would it look like if you were steering Rosh Hashanah the way you steer Pesach. So whatever it is, maybe it's getting apples and honey, blowing the shofar, deciding which programs you're going to watch. And by the way, you're not being disloyal if you watch your rabbi and another rabbi, or you hear two sermons. It's actually an opportunity to learn more Torah this year, as opposed to only the synagogue's Torah. But I will say, pick a home and be a member of one home. So I'm a big believer in that. But it's not disloyal. So pick how you're going to run. Like, you create your Haggadah and you create your Seder. Think about how you're going to run your Rosh Hashanah. Are you going to pick what you're going to listen to, the questions you're going to ask, the events you're going to do, and really to hack this holiday and make it your own?
I want to come back to that in just a moment. I want to come back to that because I want to ask for some more specifics about how you're doing it. But before we get to that, let's ask Mark this question. So, Mark, this year, in so many ways, the themes of the holiday have, in a certain strange sense, come very close to us. The holiday is ultimately about a sense of vulnerability before the mystery of an uncertain future. And all of us are feeling some degree of anxiety in front of an uncertain future. No one knows how this pandemic is going to end or if it's going to end. No one knows what the social unrest outside is going to produce for us. No one knows what this election is going to do for us. Right now here in Southern California, which you are mercifully now safe away from, the sky is burning. I literally mean the sky is yellow with smoke. It's pungent. You can't breathe. It's difficult to walk outside. We're being told that 3 million acres have burned here in California, and it's just beginning. There's a deep sense of the vulnerability of being a human being, which is, of course, one of the great themes of the holiday. So what do I do with that feeling this Yontif, Mark? How do I turn that feeling into something that gives me something positive to go forward with into the new year?
Okay, here's my lemonade out of lemon speech. The first piece of it is to remember that we've been through this. We had a dress rehearsal at Passover. Our Pesach Seder involved our entire family spread out all across America for the first time because we had a Zoom Seder. So many people kind of practiced it, and they're a little more adept at it. And so I think the first thing about the holiday is to embrace the positive elements that this negative has imposed upon us. And the positive elements are that we can make an effort through technology to embrace our family and maybe a larger sense of our family by having a Zoom Rosh Hashanah dinner, by having everyone in the family you can connect with Zoom come in and say, we want you to offer your blessings for a new year, tell us how you're doing, what you hope for in the coming year. And in that way, actually have more of your family together this year than you would in an ordinary Rosh Hashanah, where you'd have the family who lives close by and can come over for Yontif dinner. That's the first thing. Use Zoom to expand your family and to connect with them. The hard part for me is Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur truly is a synagogue holiday. We can make sense of Rosh Hashanah as a home holiday. I think Sherry's idea is very, very wise and prescient. It's certainly true about Pesach, but it's not true of Yom Kippur. The simple fact that we're fasting the whole day pushes us out of our homes into synagogue for repentance. And we have to figure some way to do the opposite of Rosh Hashanah, which is gather everyone together. On Yom Kippur, we have to, I think, work on private meditation time, private reflection on what our sins really are, what we really need to improve in our life, and not in some generic way, but in a very, very cutting and personal way in which we we try to really examine our flaws. The way I do this, the most productive way for me, and I learned it from Buddhism, and I learned it from a house painter named Miladin, an Armenian house painter we used in Evanston when I was at Northwestern. He was carrying two big buckets of spackle, of plaster, up the stairs. I said, Miladin, why are you carrying two buckets? Why don't you just carry one? They're so heavy. He says, yeah, but if I carry two, I'm balanced. I'm balanced. If I carry one, I'm thrown off to one side and it hurts me. So my suggestion for preparation for Yom Kippur, which I think is much more challenging in these circumstances, is spend a certain amount of time congratulating yourself. Really, on the things that you did well this year, things that you're proud of, things that engage the better angels of your nature. And then take an equal amount of time, maybe 10 minutes, of the things you're ashamed of this year. Things that you missed the mark. You were cruel, you were jealous, you were anxious, you were gluttonous, you were whatever you were that you weren't proud of. And think of those things and think of what fears are in you that caused you to fail. Not that you failed, because that doesn't take you very far, but why you failed. What were the things you were afraid of that made you not do your best? So those are my ways of preparing. Enlarge your tent and strengthen your tent poles, as Isaiah said. Have a broad Rosh Hashanah where you include everyone you can find in a Zoom Rosh Hashanah gathering. And Yom Kippur, go inward with spiritual balancing. 10 minutes of what you're ashamed of, 10 minutes of what you are proud of.
Sherry, what question are you going to ask the people at your Yontif table to begin a conversation that leads us into that place, as Mark says, that place of both finding that which you accomplished this year and noticing those things where you had shortcomings this year?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I've been studying the Mishnayot, the law of Rosh Hashanah, every day with Dina Weiss of Hadar leading up to Rosh Hashanah. And in chapter 3, this question emerged that I want to frame our entire Rosh Hashanah about in our home. And the question is that you blow a curved or a bent shofar on Rosh Hashanah, but the rabbis say by Yom Kippur, you blow a straight one. And the question is, if it's a metaphor of how we're supposed to be, is it aspirational that we're straightened out by Yom Kippur? Or is it actual? Like, are we really supposed to figure it out and get ourselves set to be really straight this year? Or is it just a goal to reach for? So the question I want to frame for my children and for my household is, in which ways are we bent? Like, in which ways do we feel fundamentally bent? And what are those bent things that can be straightened? And what are those things that are going to take a process to straighten? And it sounds a little esoteric, but the way I say is like, I'm bent in this relationship and I aspirationally want to fix it this year, or I don't really have the agenda to fix it, right? Like, I just eventually want to fix it. And that's the question I want to ask is where are we bent? And what do we really want to fix? And what do we sort of want to set aside?
Mark, what are you going to ask at your table to move people into the holiday?
The question that I knew Jack Welch, the head of GE, arguably the greatest businessman of our time. And I asked him, Jack, I said, Jack, when you lead a meeting, what do you do when you lead a meeting? And he said, that's an interesting question. No one ever asked me, but I'll tell you, I do one thing the same in every meeting I've ever been in all the businesses I've ever run. I ask everyone around the table, what have we missed? What have we missed? He said, I know they're coming to the meeting with a whole list of things that they didn't miss, that they succeeded at, that they're proud of. But I'm not interested in that as much as I am in what we missed in the company, because it's what we missed that could hurt the company most, because we just don't see it coming and we're not prepared for it. So in my Rosh Hashanah conversations with the family and with friends, because my Rosh Hashanah group is larger than family, as I'm sure it is for all of us, I'm going to say, tell me a couple things you think you missed this year. What did you miss? And one year I remember I said, I missed using my words. You know how you say to little kids, use your words, use your words. One year I was not using my words too well and I was swearing a lot. I was really swearing a lot. I think it might have been the influence of Don Imus, because I was on this show with Tommy for many years. But I decided I really missed using language the way I knew I could use it, in an elegant, accurate, humane, comforting, and kind way. And that I didn't need to swear as much. And from that year on, I'm still swearing, mostly when I miss a putt out there on the golf course. But I don't swear as much. And so I used the Jack Welch method of what have I missed? And this year, there's no question what I missed. This year I kvetched too much. I complained too much. And the reason I complain too much is the whole society, our whole society is telling us we have reason to complain, right? The pandemic, the social unrest, everything. It's just giving you an excuse to complain, an excuse to be unhappy. And my idea is that's exactly when you need to be happy, exactly when you need to reach for the positive and not fetch so much. So that's what I missed. I'm going to try, and I hope today is an example of it. Just be more positive about things and be more hopeful about the way we can fix things. Everybody knows things are tough. You don't need to tell them that. Certainly you don't need to preach about that. I've been advising young rabbis who consult with me on their sermons, do not preach about COVID. It's a trap. Don't do it. People know all about it. They know everything. They don't want to hear more about it. They want to have a sense of hopefulness.
I just realized something, Eddie, as Mark was speaking. You asked me what question I was going to ask, but I asked my children what questions they wanted to ask, which is far more interesting than the question that I wanted to ask. And since you know Eden, both of you know her well, she said, how do you wrestle with disappointment? Because it's been a year of disappointments. And the question she wants us to spend the 10 days thinking about is wrestling with disappointment. So I'll just share that with you, that my kids are far more wiser rabbis than I could ever be. And I thought it was beautiful. Levi's question is, when do we get to go back to school? Which also interesting.
Good, very good. I'm at the risk of disappointing Mark. I've been thinking an awful lot about COVID because I really think that it's such a salient part of our experience, but not from the biological standpoint. To me, the social and the ethical standpoint of this disease is, to me, in some ways so fascinating, right? I have this imagination, and that an alien scientist comes to Earth and wants to understand human relationship, human beings, and how we act. And the way that this alien scientist decides to do, the experiment he decides to do, is to remove one element from the repertoire of human behavior. Now, if he were to mess with something vital like the food supply, he'd panic us all, and that wouldn't show him who we are. So he takes something much more subtle. He takes away our ability to gather. He takes away one little teeny bit of the human repertoire, our ability to gather. And guess what happens? Watch the way human culture morphs and changes, and human beings respond if they're not able simply to gather. What do you lose? What have we lost through this? We've lost theater and cinema and sporting events. We've lost sitting on an airplane, travel. We've lost sitting in a restaurant. We've lost worship together. We've lost so many parts of us, and we've been stuck inside, stuck in small groups and pods and family groups and isolated. And what's so ironic about that, is that what he chose, our alien scientists, in choosing this gathering disease is something we were doing anyway, because that's what modernity is. It's running away from the communal into the individual. So what he's saying to us is, okay, you want to be individuals? You want to be monads separated from each other? Good, I'm going to let you do it. Let's see how you like it. And you take away this one little bit. So for me, the question is, what have we learned? What have we learned about our needs for each other? What have we learned about the desire to share life together? What have we learned about our about what we miss now from the gregarious, the herd instinct that's built into human beings to share the human family? And the other piece of which, again, which is so very interesting to me, is it's such an insidious disease. In order to defeat it, even though we're distanced, we're going to have to reassert solidarity in order to defeat it. We're going to have to reinsert cooperation in order to defeat it. I wear a mask. I don't wear a mask to protect me. I wear a mask to protect you. I wear a mask to protect the lady in back of me in the line at Trader Joe's. I wear a mask to protect the person who's sitting next to me on the airplane. I wear a mask because I have a sense of the solidarity of the human family, and I have to be able to assert that. And the ones who don't want to wear masks, and they get a lot of press, they're not many, maybe there's too many, but they get a lot of press, are the ones who don't want to assert that human solidarity. And the scientists, our alien scientists, has engineered it so that the only way to stop the pandemic is to reassert human solidarity. So the two questions I want to ask is, what do you want back that the virus took away? What parts of us do we miss? What parts of our repertoire behaviors are we missing? And what's it going to take? What changes within the self, within culture, is it going to take to defeat this thing? And where are we going to get the resources? Where are we going to find the resources to reassert that kind of solidarity in order to reassert that, in order to do this? And that's, to me, a really interesting question for religion, because religion deals with the way we see ourselves and who we are in the world and what's most important to us. Mark, go ahead, please.
Yeah, look, I want to cheer you up. I want to cheer everyone up. Maybe it's because I just unpacked most of my boxes and I feel like my life is returning from being in a taped box. But I think there's a lot that we still have with community. Let me just give you a couple of examples. These are the best NBA finals. I'm a sports fan like you, Ed, and these are the best NBA finals I can remember. They're all the games are exciting and wonderful and intense, and the level of play is extraordinary. Why? Because all the players had half a season. They're all fresh. They're in one place. They don't have to travel, and they're playing their hearts out. Now, is there a community for the people who were sitting in the stadiums? No. But those were rich people who could afford those seats. That never included me. I was always watching it on TV. So I have a real sense of the NBA Finals as being in the community of basketball fans who are watching it. Secondly, golf has never been better. And the reason it's never been better is there's no fans drinking beer and talking just before a guy hits a shot on the TV. The TV golf coverage has been a coverage of the beautiful golf courses without people messing it up, and the players playing without people screaming and yelling, and it's been beautiful, really beautiful. The beauty of the game is returned in that way. And baseball is better when you go see it. I admit that. But even baseball has been good because you can tune into the TV and see it again. And there's that sense of after you've lost something, you get it back again. You say, oh yeah, that's what baseball is like. That's why I love it. So it's not as bad as people say. We haven't been, community has not been taken away from us. A few rich people can't sit in stadiums. Okay, that's tough. But, it's part of the burden of being a rich person. The fact is, everyone else can still see the stuff the way we saw it. And we're connected the same way we always were with sports we love. And in terms of other things, the thing I miss most is going out for pizza, going out to sitting in a restaurant and having a beer and, sitting in a place like a normal person. But even that, you can have people over and sit on your porch and you can still do stuff. So in my non-kvetch, things aren't as bad as they seem mood, which probably will last about a week.
I'll put it differently, Mark. Let me put it differently. I think that we've adjusted in many ways.
I was going to say,
Go ahead,
I
Cher.
agree. No, I agree with you, Eddie. I think we're just adjusting, which is a nice sign that we have adaptability. But I think what you said, Eddie, was brilliant. I think we always wanted to be independent. Suddenly we got independence, and now what we need to resolve it is solidarity. I mean, there's something really brilliant there. And I wanted to add, and forgive me, I keep thinking about it as you're talking. I hope that when you listen to this, and if you're not listening on Shabbat, or you're listening after Shabbat, that you write down the questions and put them in the Facebook feed. Because I know that I would love to hear, and I know Eddie and Mark would love to hear what questions you're asking, right? Like, is it going to take solidarity? What's that going to look like? What have you lost? What will you miss? How will you deal with disappointment? I'm interested in every question. And by the way, that will make Rosh Hashanah look even more like Pesach.
So it's the adjustments, Mark, that I find really remarkable. Look, I'm still working in a synagogue, so I've done now dozens of funeral services and many, many weddings. Bride and groom, a bride will cry to me and say, this isn't what I wanted. And they postponed it twice, thinking it might be over. And finally, they needed to go ahead and get married already. So instead of having 100 dear friends, 200 dear friends in a beautiful spot, it's 12 of us in the backyard, which is lovely. And I begin the wedding by saying, I know this wasn't what you imagined it to be. And I apologize, because a bride should always get her dreams come true. But what matters is here. And slowly, if I do it right, slowly, that's what occurs to her as we begin the ceremony, that she's here with her, he's here, she's here, they're here together, these two loving partners. The parents might be there, or else on Zoom. The friends who matter are there. The intimacy comes to shine, even though the other parts of the wedding isn't there. Same thing with funeral services. We don't have the crowd of friends coming to bolster the mourner, but the circle of the family gets to be more intimate at that point. So we miss things, and we've discovered things, we've learned things, and that's what's so interesting to me, is what has this come to teach us?
Let me just say about that, this distinction may help us all come to a common understanding of our present circumstance, which I think we do have. And that is the first verse of the 23rd Psalm, Adonai Roi Lo Achsar. It's not that there are things we want that we can't have. There's lots of things we want that we can't have. I want to go to a game, I want to have a wedding where everyone's there, like you say. I want all that, but there's nothing I lack. And that's what your message to the bride and groom was. And that's what the message I think that rabbis have to give. I think this is a critical moment for spiritual leadership. If people come to synagogue and they hear rabbis kvetching, not that either of you would do that, but if they hear them kvetching about COVID and kvetching about this or that, and what we lack, I think people are just going to get depressed. I think the message they yearn for, the message they need, because it's the truth. It's the truth because people need the truth. And that truth is that you lack nothing. right now, in COVID, in your home, with your family, with your life the way it is, you lack nothing. There's things you want that you don't have, but there's nothing essential for your life that you lack.
I disagree.
I think that
Mark, I
message.
disagree. I have to tell you, naming people's
What do you
losses.
lack? What do
No.
you lack?
You're talking about there's a huge losses upon losses right now for people. And I think ignoring that and saying like, look on the bright side, there's that. It's like, it's almost ignoring their feelings. When a child, I mean, just have the scenario, a son had to bury his father. He went into Israel. He had to quarantine. He had 3 minutes to say goodbye. He's done Shiva on Zoom. Let me be very clear. That is a loss. Knowing that I buried my own parents and I had huge family come around me and hold my hand. And I can think of people coming at 4 a.m. and holding my hand and how much that still gives me strength. And that not having that now is a loss. And I think it's not about complaining. I don't think it's about complaining. I think it's about naming where people are experiencing tremendous loss. And what you're saying is physical needs. Yes, my physical needs, thank God, are met, but there's a lot of people that are not. I have a lot of people very close to me that you're on mute. You're on mute, Mark. That's going to be my mantra this year.
I'm not talking about physical needs. I'm talking about spiritual needs. The best shivas I've been at in my life have been during COVID. The best one.
Okay, so let's agree.
Involved hundreds and hundreds of people who couldn't have come to the shiva otherwise.
So let's agree that there are needs being met, and that's one aspect of this, and there are needs that are not. I mean, I have to combine on both sides actually, because I recognize that I still live in a comfortable home with people I love and have plenty of food. At the same time, I have lots of young friends who can't get back to school.
I have friends that have lost jobs, can't pay their bills, and can't pay their rent. And we're not talking homeless people. We're talking that they had a great job. They've lost their job because the work is not there. And they can't pay their bills. Yeah, that's a huge loss.
People's futures have been compromised. It's very true. I want to complete our conversation today. And I want to ask your forgiveness for a moment, because instead of looking forward to the holiday coming up, I want to ask you to join me for a moment in looking backwards. Because I think one of the things, especially when people are grieving, when people feel like they're missing something important, is to be able to look backwards. The future might be cloudy and uncertain, but the past is still vivid and powerful. So as we begin these holidays, I think it's important for all of us to look back and to gather in the holidays we've celebrated. And these holidays tend to be very powerful moments. They're powerful enough that they're memorable. So tell me when a memorable, your memories of a memorable yontif, of a yontif that touched you and moved you, elevated you, lifted you, and left you with something inside that's very precious to you. Sherry, you want to start?
Sure. When I was at Sinai, I had the good fortune of being able to reimagine what high holidays could look like. And at Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur, this was 20 years ago, we had invited every single family to come in front of the ark. And we had this huge celebration of closing the gates. And every family came in front of the ark and got to say their own personal prayers. And it took the full Ne'ilah, and we ran Ne'ilah on top of it with this music. And I had the good fortune of standing right at the ark as people came up. And right in that moment, what I saw was so intimate and powerful. And I can feel it palpably right now. And it's interesting, every year at this time, I get multiple emails. Rabbi Hirsch, can you just run your Ne'ilah? Can you just run your Ne'ilah? Because it was something that transcended every part of the holiday. And I reflect on it all the time, and I miss it terribly.
Thank you. Rabbi Gelman, a memorable yontif.
Well, there's so many memories. For me, the yontif that I think lifted me higher than any other was the yontif where I was able to take a message from Yerushalayim and give it in a sermon to someone who actually heard it and it changed their life. One of the big issues for rabbis is whether preaching changes people or does anything but entertain them, or what does it do? I'm a big believer in preaching. I love preaching, but I understand the critique of it, that it's a one-sided, it isn't even a conversation because no one talks back to you. So this was the story that I told you before about the Beit Siebenberg in Yerushalayim, this diamond merchant who excavated his basement and found a whole Roman street right next to the Kotel. An amazing thing, an amazing thing. And I gave the sermon about how we need to look in our basement, sort of a natural connection. And afterwards, a young woman came up to me and said, I understand I haven't looked into my basement. I need to look into my basement, which was exactly what the sermon was about. And it was the first time I had direct evidence that something I said actually had some impact on people. Now, people have been generous in their comments about sermons I've given in my life, but that one yontif, right after the sermon, she's crying her eyes out. And I thought I had insulted her or something was wrong. I went up to her and she said, no, it was the most important thing you could have said to me. So for all the rabbis who are about to preach, I encourage you to try and find a message that leaves your heart, not your mind, not some analysis of the political or medical condition of the world, but something that leaves your heart. Because the rabbis teach words that leave the heart enter the heart. So let words leave your heart, and they will enter the hearts of those who hear you. And your sermon will be a success.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thanks, both of you. I'll take the prerogative of the chair to give two very brief ones. So, profound yontif. I was a student, a college student in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, in 1973. I was in Ulpan in the summer. The university hadn't started, but we were doing Ulpan classes. I was with a large group of kids who had come from the University of California. We were shepherded by a wonderful professor, Professor Brenner, and his family. His family is very close to me now. And other kids had family to go to. I didn't have any family living in Israel at the time. Some kids decided to go to the local conservative synagogue because they were familiar and wanted to hear the voices of their own childhood. I decided to be adventurous. I went into the old city. I took my talis and a machzer, and I went into the old city, and I found I went to the Ramban synagogue, which is a beautiful Sephardic synagogue, and I walked in. There was room. It was early, and I found a place to sit, and I sat and enjoyed the beautiful liturgy of the Sephardic, the Spanish, Portuguese, Jewish tradition. And then, but it was strangely empty. It was strangely empty. This is Yom Kippur, October 6th, 1973. And there weren't a lot of people there, which was really odd. And I had made an arrangement with some friends to go to the Kotel for Mincha. So when our service ended, people wished us Shana Tova and Gemar Chatimet Tova. And I went to the Kotel, and the soldiers were chasing us out of the Kotel. There was nobody at the Kotel, which was really weird. And as I'm walking out of the city, a chassid is standing in the middle of the way. And he looks at me and he asks me in Hebrew, you have a place to daven mincha? I say, no, I'm mechapes. I'm looking for a place that could come with me. And he takes me upstairs, and there's this little yeshiva, and they have a base midrash. They have a study hall with an Aron Kodesh services, and there's 8 or 10 people there, and I was the 9th or the 10th, and we davened. And it was 10, 15 men and 10, 15 women, and lots of little children running around, and we davened the mincha, and then we davened Mariv. And they blew the shofar, and we went outside there's a special ceremony called Birkat Levana. You bless the moon, and we blessed the moon, and they had juice and cookies. And by this time the crowds of people were leaving the city. There'd been a siren, and I walked out of the city, And I only found out then that the war had begun. And my professor was kind of upset because he didn't know where I was. It was this remarkable thing of, like time stopped for a minute. Yes, there's a war, but it's Yom Kippur and we have to pray. And all kinds of interesting Jews from all over the world gather in this base midrash. While around us the world was falling apart, here in this quiet little pocket of prayer and sanctity, there was reflection and there was prayer and there was singing. And that was kind of remarkable. Just a memorable thing. The other one I remember is being a congregational rabbi. I was in Texas, and a little kid comes up to me, I think Rosh Hashanah afternoon, and he pulls on, I had a robe on. Rabbi, I got to tell you something. I said, what is it? He said, Rabbi. I come down, I listen to him. I said, what is it? He said, I want to tell you that I feel sorry for all of our neighbors. I said, what do you mean you feel sorry for all your neighbors? He said, I just feel sorry for all of our neighbors. I said, why? He said, and he looked at me like I'm crazy. He said, what do you mean, why? Look, Rabbi, look what we get to do today. We all got dressed up. We all came to the synagogue. Mom and dad, my grandma, my grandpa, my brothers and my sisters, all my friends from school. We're all here. We get to sing the prayers. We blow the shofar. We get to say Shana Tova. For us, Rabbi, it's Yontif. And for them, it's only Thursday. And I said to myself, much like Rabbi Gelman, I don't know what's going to happen, but when my turn to stand in front of the great throne on high comes and God says, did you do anything in your life? I'm going to say, yeah, I changed one kid. I reached one soul in the people of Israel. So listen, I hope that all of us can approach this holiday with those eyes, with the eyes of a little kid with wonder and joy, that we're together as families, that we pray for the new year, that our hearts are filled with hope for the world about us, and we blow the shofar and ask God for our blessings. And thank you both for sharing this with me, and I wish all of you, to you and your families in Florida and in West LA, and to all of you who are listening, Shana Tova should be a sweet and a happy and a healthy and a good new year. Thank you so much for joining us.
Shana Tova to both of you and to
Shana
all of you.
Tova, Sherry.
Be well.